In this video, we're going to show you how to replace a right rear axle on your Buick Enclave. This will be located behind the rear wheel. Let's get started. Using a 22mm socket, remove the 6 lug nuts. Remove the wheel. Using a 34mm socket, remove the axle nut. Using a 21mm socket, remove the 2 bolts for the caliper. Remove the bolts, pull the caliper off of the rotor. We're going to put this on top. Make sure it's sitting somewhere where there's no tension on the brake hose and make it so it can't fall off. Using a T30 bit, remove the rotor screw. Remove the rotor. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to remove the bolt for the ABS sensor. Remove the bolt. Using a pair of pliers, we're going to wiggle the sensor back and forth. As we wiggle, we're going to pull straight up. Remove the sensor from the knuckle. Put this somewhere where it's not going to get dinged. Using an 18mm socket, remove the 3 wheel bearing bolts. I'm going to install an axle nut onto the end of the axle shaft, just a few threads. Putting this on so that when this bearing comes out, this axle nut should keep hold of it. We're going to use an air hammer with a chisel bit. With our hub popped out, we're going to remove our axle nut. Push the axle through. Remove the bearing. We're going to pull the backing plate down. You can let it just hang on this e-brake cable. Using a large pry bar, we're going to pop the axle out of the rear differential. Before doing this, be sure you have a catch bucket under you. Fluid may come out. Pull the axle straight out, pull it through the knuckle, remove the axle from the vehicle. Remove the axle nut off the new axle. Install the axle through the knuckle. Line the axle up with the differential. Make sure the splines are lined up. We're going to seat the axle. I'm going to push straight in. Using a soft face hammer, we're going to tap the end of the axle to help it seat. Using a piece of sandpaper, we're going to go around and we're going to clean the knuckle surface. We don't want to take any material off, we just want to get rid of the corrosion. Get the face nice and clean, and then we're going to move on to the inside and clean this inner rim. With our surfaces nice and clean, we're going to put a slight skim coat of grease on this inside where our bearing is going to seat. We just have to do this frontmost layer. There'll be a little lip. Get the backing plate into place. Get the hub lined up with the splines on the axle. Line up the holes for the bolts. Clean all of the old thread locker off of the wheel bearing bolts. We're going to install new thread locker to the wheel bearing bolts. Install the bolts through the knuckle to the wheel bearing. Get these started by hand. We're going to tighten down the bolts as we go around. Make sure you go incrementally with each bolt so that the bearing sits square. Torque the wheel bearing bolts to 96 foot-pounds. Using a 34mm socket, snug the axle nut down. I'm going to install 2 lug nuts. Using a big bar, we're going to hold the hub while we torque down the axle nut. Torque the axle nut to 151 foot-pounds. Install the rotor. Install the rotor screw. Kind of lightly snug it down. Clean the old thread locker off of the caliper bracket bolts. Put a bit of new thread lock on the bolt. Pull the caliper down, install it onto the rotor. Get the bolt started. Snug the bolts down. Torque the caliper bracket bolts to 129 foot-pounds. Install the ABS sensor. Get it fully seated. Get the bolt started. Snug down the bolt. Install the wheel. Get all the lug nuts started. Go around and snug down all of the nuts. Torque the lug nuts in a star pattern to 140 foot-pounds. And you're good to go.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. the only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.